sees me anyway. Joe's gonna block me anyway, so I don't need a name tag.
Executive session is not.
You are Representative Miracle.
Who is?
This is the after I open and close, I'm going to just up for one more amendment. The door is open, so we can yell at each other, and I have extras of those. Is this bread? Yes.
We're not doing dinner.
For a minute and then recess. Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock on, what day is today? August 13th. It is a Wednesday. April. See, I'm telling you, it's going to be a rough morning. This meeting of the Election Law Committee has been scheduled today because we have 3 early bills. Early bills need to be reported out by tomorrow. We're going to try and get what other business we can done. But the reality is we have a couple of amendments in the works right now on 2 of the early bills. So we are really not ready to get going. So we are going to open the meeting and then recess until 10:30. I apologize to everybody for getting you here at 10 o'clock, but in the effort to get these things done in accordance with the schedule, that's what happens. And if you talk to me after the meeting, I can tell you how I can blame it all on the Senate. So we are going to officially start now. And with that, I would like you to stand and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone, and we are in recess until 10:30.
Madam Chair. Over here. She's good. I'm fine. Can you, what are the 3 early bills? Sorry, I missed last week's meeting, so.
Let's get going again. This is the New Hampshire House Election Law Committee. It is 10:30. We have been in recess. We are here for executive session on bills, all of which have had a public hearing. There are a couple of things that were not specifically in the notice for today's executive session. One is that we have early bills that need to be voted out for the calendar next week because they will be going to a second committee. They are 366, 418, and 425. We also have 3 bills that we did not address last week in executive session that were continued, and they are 242, 328, and 405. Before we begin today's business, I'm going to go through what I understand people should have in addition to the actual bill. SB 242, you should have an amendment 1353. $366, there is an amendment coming. You have an amendment in front of you. 405, you should have just received an amendment 1383. 1383 is actually a bill we previously passed in this body that is under consideration by the Senate. $418, you should have just gotten an amendment. That amendment number is 1487. And I believe there is also a fiscal note amended for 427. Where was the fiscal note that wasn't so pretty? What was that? There was also an amended fiscal note for 418, the one that sort of didn't look like our normal fiscal note. I don't. Well, we didn't get the only thing that looks like an amended fiscal note that we've gotten from them is 427. So the committee got what you sent out because you had mentioned at the last meeting that you had gotten it done. All right, so I think everybody has everything. Anybody at their seat that does not have what they expect to have or what I just said I thought you would have? All right. All right, and I want to welcome this morning. We have Representative Matt Simon sitting in for Representative Groen, who is on a vacation. I point that out because there needs to be some payback for that by Representative Simon. Representative Healy is here for Representative Hayward. I had a substitute provided to me for Representative Hamer. And there she is. Representative Perez is here. Sorry, I didn't see you. I'm thinking it's Representative Lane, and that wasn't going to work out. Representative Marsh, welcome, is here for Representative Cody. And Representative Merchant, welcome again, is here for Representative Muirhead. And our hope is that when we do roll calls, we get that right. All right. With that, I am going to let's try to address the bills that we had from last week, if that's all right with the committee. So we have SB 242, which is relative to the disqualification of certain persons from performing the duties of an election official. There is an amendment that you have. Is there a motion on the amendment? Representative Terosian.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept Amendment 2022-1353H.
Is there a second?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I second the motion.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative Terosian?
Sure, thank you. What the amendment does is it just strikes in lines 13, 14 of the original bill, it strikes out the word for the handling of marked ballots, and it strikes that part out. So then it reads in the bold lettering, other than a position of an election official shall not be allowed to remain in the area designated for the counting of votes. That's how then it now reads if we adopt the amendment.
All right. Questions or discussion on the amendment? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't support the amendment for all the reasons that we found House Bill 1359 inexpedient to legislate. The Constitution dictates, orders, mandates, whatever word you want to use, under Part 2, Article 32, that the moderator shall govern the election at town meetings and, of course, elections where ballots are cast. And we can't pass a state law that takes away the authority given to our moderators by the state constitution. And that's exactly what the bill does, and the amendment still does it too, because it's prohibiting the moderator from staying in a place where ballots are being counted or handled. I had asked Senator Gray specifically if an area could be cordoned off where inside the voting area, if an area could be cordoned off where someone could be assigned to be processing absentee ballots, because that's something that can be happening throughout the day and usually does, especially in a big election. But Senator Gray's response was no, he really should be out of the building entirely, not just away from that area. So again, I'm going to oppose it because we're denying the moderator the opportunity to fulfill the responsibilities he or she has under the state constitution.
Further discussion. I'm just going to say I'm going to vote for this, but I am not 100% sure that the change addresses the issue. I think the issue that's being raised by the election official on a ballot as a candidate for office is their actual presence, that their presence can affect someone's decision to vote for or against someone in the polling place. I don't know that I've heard anybody say that they are concerned about the conduct itself of an official who's on the ballot. However, this is an issue that comes before this committee session after session after session. And I think that by restricting it to the area designated for the counting of votes, we allow the moderator, constitutionally assigned to the duties of oversight, to still conduct oversight duties. I also think it is possible to cordon off the designated area for counting of votes much easier than it is to do what the original bill proposed, which included the handling of marked ballots, because arguably walking from the voting booth to the ballot box is a place where there are marked ballots, so arguably that would prevent somebody from walking through that area. And that seemed to be not effectuating the purpose of the bill or practical. So I can't say I disagree with anything anybody said, but maybe if we pass this, we won't have a bill on it next year, and we'll see how it works. Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with what you said, and again, we know it's not perfect, but the reason for striking out that verbiage was to, basically it's a carve-out for the handling of the marked ballots. They can still do that, the moderator, even if they're on the ballot. So it's kind of a compromise. It gets us partway there. So for that reason, I'm supporting it. But I concur, it's not perfect.
Of course, all the other bills we do here in this committee are perfect. So there you go. All right. Any other discussion on this amendment? The motion on the floor is to amend the bill. Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll on Amendment 1353.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Marsh.
No.
Representative Ward.
No.
Representative Sandler. No. Representative Hamer.
Representative Lane. No, it's Representative Perez. Sorry.
I thought you just,
No.
okay, changed everything. Representative Freitas. Representative,
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Merchant.
No.
Chair.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Representative Lane?
Oh, I thought you had said it after Perez. Okay, so I thought you had said Perez.
No.
No.
Okay.
I heard you speak, and that's why I just marked it down.
Oh, yeah, I was just pointing to Representative Perez.
Okay.
So 11 to 9.
All right. The amendment carries 11 to 9. Is there a further motion? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I make a motion to auto pass as amended for Senate Bill 242.
Is there a second?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I second the motion.
Representative Quayle seconds it. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? Seeing none, I'm going to
Okay.
ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Marsh.
No.
Representative Ward.
No.
Representative Sandler. Yes. Representative Perez.
No.
Representative Lane.
No.
Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Merchant.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes. SB 242 will be reported as amended with a vote of 11 to 9. I am asking for committee reports today. To the extent we can get bills in the calendar for next week, it means the committee will have less to do in the last session, so we're going to try to get in what we can, though admittedly, everybody's going to be concentrating on the early bills for the calendar for next session. I also want to say I feel a little bit like the disjointed first grade teacher where everybody has sat in the wrong seats. I am completely confused by both sides of the room today with Representative Lane sitting at the wrong table completely. And I have 4 individuals at this table over here. So if the chair is looking around the room like she's lost something, it's because she can't keep track of where anybody is today. All right, SB 328 is a bill that was carried over from last week. This is a bill relative to the state primary. This proposes to change the state primary to August. Is there a motion? Representative Sweeney.
Madam Chair, I move we find Senate Bill 328 inexpedient to legislate.
Is there a second?
I second that, Madam Chairman.
Representative Barry seconds it. Would you like to speak to your motion, Representative Sweeney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I very begrudgingly moved to find this inexpedient to legislate. 8 years ago, I sponsored a bill to move the primary to June. That got absolutely nowhere. I think it died on the House floor in a voice vote. Last year, I sponsored the same legislation along with some others. We passed it in the House, went over to the Senate. It was amended in the Senate to August. We committee conferenced it. I begrudgingly agreed in the committee conference, as did others, to just try to get something passed with the August deadline for the Senate was not budging on that. And then that bill to move the primary to August got vetoed by the governor. And I was really hopeful this year when I saw that the Senate put forward a bill to move the primary to June, that we would finally be able to get it a June primary bill to the governor's desk, not speculating what that outcome would have been, but I was hopeful we would have been able to do that. And unfortunately, it seems like we're in the same place as we were last year with an August bill that I don't believe we're going to be able to make work this year to pass a June bill. So I believe the supporters of a June primary should not see this more or less as a setback. Hopefully next year we can bring forward a June primary that can go the distance. So unfortunately, today I'll vote to make this inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support the motion to find this bill inexpedient to legislate for the reasons really that the governor mentioned in his veto message for a similar bill last year, where he said it could result in depressed voter engagement in the election, reduced turnout, could hurt the ability of municipalities to recruit poll workers and election day volunteers. And I would just add that one of my election officials in Nashua just told me this week that he didn't believe all the gymnasiums where we hold our polling locations are necessarily air conditioned, which means an August date is not too attractive to them. So with that, I will be supporting the motion to find this bill inexpedient to legislate.
Representative Barry.
Yes, I'm a big fan of June. I'm not a big fan of August, but I do want to read into, not to belabor this point, but I do want to read a quote. New Hampshire hosts the second latest primary in the nation, September 13th, giving the eventual Republican nominee little time and few resources to communicate after emerging from what is set to be an extreme and chaotic primary. That is the words of Senator Maggie Hassan's campaign manager. So I will create a new quote for all of my friends on the other side of the aisle. New Hampshire hosts the second latest primary in the nation, September 13th, giving the eventual Democratic nominee little time and few resources to communicate after emerging from what is set to be an extreme and chaotic primary. That is me talking about the Democrat primary for governor today. This cuts both ways. We need to fix this. It needs to be June.
Thank you. Representative Terosian.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I initially was against moving the primary date at all, but there are many good points brought up as to why September is too late for many reasons I won't go into because you've heard some of them. So I'll actually be voting against the ITL motion in favor of the change to August because I thought it was a good compromise.
Further discussion on the motion, which is to ITL SB 328. Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
No.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Sandler.
Yes.
Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
No.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Merchant.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
18 to
The vote is 18-2. Does anybody have objection to this going on the consent calendar? Seeing none, it will be reported on the consent calendar. The next bill from last week is 405. 405 is relative to fines and penalties for election law violations. You should have an amendment 1383 that should have been just passed out to you. Everybody got it? Amendment to 405 FN 1383. It's my name's on the top of the amendment. People have it? Representative Ward is indicating that side of the table got it. Representative Terosian, do you have it? All right. Does anybody have a motion on 405? Representative Barry.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would like to move Amendment 1383 to SB 405.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Representative Bergeron seconds it. Representative Barry, do you want to speak?
Given that Representative Bergeron is seconded, I'm gonna save some time and move on.
Just so people are aware of what 1383 does, 1383 deals with the bill this committee is a bill this committee has previously passed in regards to getting some accountability at election, the conduct of election on a local level. It is an appropriate topic and consistent with the bill that Senator Gaida has brought forward. And it is my hope that the Senate will come to grips with doing something with this issue if it's presented in the same bill. Is there anybody else? Representative Bergeron, did you want to speak?
No, I think the chair summarized it quite well. This is a bill that passed the committee, although the minority didn't support it in its original form. I'm referring to the amendment. It was a very minor objection, and I think this bill is improved with the amendment that's been proposed, and therefore I will be supporting the amendment, and then the bill is ought to pass as amended.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is an amendment to SB 405. The amendment is 1383. Seeing no red lights or hands, Representative Freitas, are you all set? Okay. I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
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 Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Sandler. Yes. Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamlet.
Yes.
Representative Merchant.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
The amendment passes 20-0. SB 405 is now on the floor as amended. Is there a motion? Representative Barry.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would move that SB 405 be ought to pass as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Representative Terosian seconds it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Representative Sandler. Yes. Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamlet.
Yes.
Merchant.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
2-0.
The motion of 405 ought to pass as amended, passes 20-0. Without objection, this will go on the consent calendar. And that concludes our consideration of the bills that had originally been thought to go forward last week. So we are now back to the bills that have been noticed in the calendar for this week. The first one numerically is 348, relative to political expenditures and contributions. This bill was the one that presented what is alleged by some to be the limits in statute in chart form. Is there a motion on 348, Representative Terosian?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to, for House Bill 348, I make a motion of ought to pass.
Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chairman.
Representative McDonald seconds it. Is there any discussion on this motion? Representative Bergeron?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The language in the bill is somewhat confusing and somewhat careless. House Bill 348 limits the contributions an individual can make to a political party, but removes any limit on what an individual can contribute to a political advocacy organization. It also removes any limit on what a political advocacy organization can make to a political party. It's kind of a roundabout way of removing any limit on what an individual can contribute to a political party. There's also the issue that was raised when this table was inserted into the statute. The heading of the section talks about prohibited contributions, yet in the table there are some contributions that are described as unlimited. So you can't really prohibit any amount over the word unlimited as being ineligible for being contributed to a campaign. With that said, even though I think it's somewhat sloppy language, the bill had a lot of support in the Senate, bipartisan support, came out of committee on a 5-0 vote. Senator Susi proposed a floor amendment which passed, and then the bill passed by a voice vote. It appears that the bill offers more that is good than what is bad, and so I'm going to look the other way in terms of the sloppy drafting of the bill, and I will vote to support Senate Bill 348.
Further discussion on 348, Representative Terosian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When this first came before us, first I was like, I don't really see why we need this, but then looking through the statute and the way how difficult it was to dredge out the information, I too agree it's not perfect what bill is, but having that table, the gray table, even though it's not gray,
I think we should name it the gray table.
okay. We'll have to have an amendment. But anyway, it makes it very clear what the limits are on the various categories. And the bill doesn't change any of those numbers. It just makes it clear what they are. For that reason, I'll vote yes.
Further discussion? I agree with Representative Bergeron, and I think it was actually Ms. Zink from Open Democracy who brought up the double negative. So I pulled out afterwards and I just did again the statute. And I think this goes to one of the things I've been saying for a little while, is that our election laws need to be rewritten, because the reality is the way political contributions are in the statute is as a negative. So it makes it awkward, I think, in the reading, though not discernible as to what its intent is. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll. The motion on the floor is OTP.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Sandler.
Yes.
Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
The vote on SB 348 is OTP 20-0 without objection. That will go on consent calendar. The next bill that this committee has before it is SB 365 relative to absentee ballot outer envelopes. It had a public hearing on April 6th. Is there a motion? Representative McDonald,
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like to move an expedient to legislate on this bill.
is there a second? Representative Terosian.
Make a motion to make this second on the, an expedient to legislate on, 365.
Thank you. Representative McDonald, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would, Madam Chairman, thank you. There's a number of concerns regarding this proposed legislation. We heard extensive testimony the other day when we had the hearing, concerns about people with visual challenges, visual impairment being able to make sure that their vote was going to be counted because of the concern about the affidavit being properly included. So there's some issues that way. There's been legal issues in the past between the state and visually challenged people. There's also security issues with any kind of pre-processing, which is what this is really about. So for those reasons, Madam Chairman, I move an expedient to legislate.
Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be opposing the motion to find this bill an expedient to legislate. Yes, it is partial pre-processing of absentee ballots, but what that really entails is allowing the clerk to remove the affidavit envelope from the mail-in envelope, attach the absentee ballot request form to that affidavit envelope, and under current guidance, also attach the, use the right term, I guess, the accessible voting program affidavit to the affidavit envelope as well. We're not asking the clerks or any other election officials to have additional interaction with voters if they realize there's a problem with it. People that are voting in office can just hand the affidavit envelope over the counter to the clerk, not stick it in another envelope. It's not a big cost savings, but you're not going to be using as many outer envelopes. I think in a large election, this will be tremendous help to the election officials at the polls because it will save them time slitting envelopes and removing the affidavit envelopes from the ballot. So I will be supporting Senate Bill 365 as ought to pass, but since the motion is ITL, I will be opposing that first.
Further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is to ITL 365. Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
No.
Representative Marsh,
No.
Representative Ward,
No.
Representative Sandler. No. Representative Perez,
No.
Representative Lane,
No.
Representative Freitas,
No.
Hamblett,
No.
Representative Merchant,
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes. The motion of, for 365 carries 11-9. This will go on the regular calendar. The next bill in front of this committee is 366. This is an early bill, and this is in regards to requiring an audit of ballots cast in the 2022 primary and general elections. You should have an amendment in front of you on this bill 1408. Is there a motion on the amendment? Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to pass amendment number 1408H, amendment to Senate Bill 366.
Is there a second?
Second.
Representative Ward seconds. Would you like to speak to your motion on the amendment, Representative Bergeron?
Yes, thank you. I had a concern as a result of the testimony on this bill during the public hearing that the Secretary of State's office might only pull one AccuVote voting device out of a polling place, even if two were used. And the testimony indicated that the election officials would be instructed to make sure the ballots that went through each AccuVote machine were separated and not combined into a single boxes or a group of boxes. And let me share a story with you where my concern comes from. A number of years ago, during a presidential election in Nashua, I was concerned that we didn't have enough ballots coming from the Secretary of State. So as allowed under the law at the time, we had our print shop prepare 500 ballots for each of the 9 wards. And those were boxed separately. They couldn't be scanned, of course, because they were printed on heavier stock. But other than adding my signature to them, they looked exactly like the official ballots. And on those boxes, I put in an 8.5 by 11 paper, do not open this box. Use last. These ballots will not scan. We talked about it in training. And darn, if 5 minutes after the polls open up, I had a call from one of the moderators saying our ballots aren't scanning. So I asked him to go back and look at the box that he opened up to use, and he came back all apologetic. I'm sorry, I opened up the one I wasn't supposed to. So we might have the best of intentions of telling our election officials not to mix the ballots that went through the tabulator in machine X with the cartons that are supposed to hold the ballots for machine Y. But there's no guarantee that's going to happen. We should minimize the possibility of human error at the polling places. I think we would have a much more difficult problem if that occurs and then the ballots are taken back for an audit at the Secretary of State's office and we suddenly find that the high-speed scanner has different numbers than the AccuVote machine had on election night. So my amendment simply says if more than one machine is used in a polling place, all the machines used in the polling place shall be part of the audit. And that's the purpose for the amendment.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank the member from Nashua for taking a good bill and adding a great amendment to it, and look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Representative Barry.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It was a good faith effort, and thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? I frankly didn't want to get into the fact that you picked the wrong machine to audit and the other one needed to be audited. That was my concern. So, all right. I'm not seeing any further discussion on it. The motion on the floor is to amend 366 by Amendment 1408. I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Representative Ward.
Yes.
Representative Sandler.
Yes.
Representative Perez.
Yes.
Representative Lane.
Yes.
Representative Freitas.
Yes.
Representative Hamblett.
Yes.
Representative Merchant.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
20-0.
The amendment passes for 366. Is there a motion, further motion on 366? Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes, I move ought to pass as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Madam Chair.
Representative Terosian seconds. Do you want to speak to your amendment? I mean, your motion, sorry.
Yes, this is a good bill, and this is something that will increase voter confidence. It's something that voters want, and I look forward to voting in favor of this bill.
Representative Terosian, did you have your hand up?
Yep, briefly. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I too support this bill, but the amendment makes it better. Thanks to the member from Nashua for bringing that amendment, and I'll be voting yes.
Any further discussion on the motion on the floor, which is OTPA for 366? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander,
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Yes.
Hyman,
Yes.
Representative Whaley,
Yes.
Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Marsh,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, yes. Representative Perez,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Freitas,
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
0.
366 will be reported ought to pass as amended with a unanimous vote without objection. That will go on the consent calendar. The next bill that we have to consider is 418. 418 is another early bill. This is relative to verification of voter affidavits, and you should have an amendment 1487. Everybody have it? I don't have any other amendments on 1418. All right, is there a motion on 1418? Representative Barry?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would move that we adopt Amendment 1487 to SB 418.
Is there a second?
I second that, Madam Chair.
Representative Sweeney seconds it. Representative Barry, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm going to limit my comments to just the amendment because I imagine we'll have lengthy discussion on the underlying bill. What I did was I took in many of the considerations that was brought forward in the testimony to try to make the bill more appealing. I'm not delusional to think that this will change the outcome of the underlying vote should this pass, to the amendment passed, but I do think that there were some legitimate concerns that were brought up that need to be addressing. So I'll kind of go through them. There's three main points in this. The first of which is move the enactment date to January 1st of 2023. We shouldn't be making major election law changes in a general election year. It's just foolish. Second thing is I'm sure that there will be a lawsuit, not because I think there's anything legally wrong with this, but because anyone can file a lawsuit and get an injunction going. So this will give time for any lawsuit to work its way through before we're trying to implement it. So that was a good faith effort to not do anything in an election year. The first major change is in Section 1. I removed the requirement for anybody who's already on the rolls that shows up without an ID. As is common knowledge now, you don't actually need an ID to vote when you're voting in New Hampshire. They ask you for your ID. You don't actually have to show it. I'm not going to change that. The reason being is that we cut off registration 14 days before an election. It's the job of the supervisor checklist to make sure that people that are on the checklist actually live where they say they live. So I'm going to let them do their job. So this scopes this bill down to just people that are showing up on election day with nothing. So now we are only talking about people who are showing up to the polling location on election day with nothing. So I think that is the problem. The other main, excuse me, the allergies are getting me. The other thing I did was I changed it to 7th day after the election instead of 10. That wasn't to make it harder. It's just to try to accommodate some of the UOCAVA concerns that were brought up. No one's trying to disenfranchise military voters here. That's ridiculous. Let's be real. I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran. My brother's a veteran. No one's trying to disenfranchise veteran voters here, active duty military voters here. It's ludicrous. So we are going to try to address that somewhat. And bring that down so that our military people overseas can get their ballots on time in compliance with UOCAVA. Once again, it's a good faith effort. It still doesn't make the bill perfect. There's still some things I would see like to be changed, but it'll send it to committee conference, and I'm sure the Senate will opine on this, and we'll have something else that will come forward. But I think it does make it. It is undoubtable to my friends on the other side of the aisle that this makes it better. I know that you probably still won't support it, but it was a good faith effort.
Thank you. Further comments on the amendment that's on the floor, which is 1487. Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I appreciate the movement to shorten the amount of time for the purpose of accommodating UOCAVA voters. I would remind members of this committee that last year we had a bill before us looking to move every 6th or 7th year the state primary election to the first Tuesday in September. And the Secretary of State testified at that point during the testimony that the reason for doing so is at the end of the recount, there were only a few days where the Secretary of State's office could manage to get the ballots printed to meet the 45-day requirement under UOCAVA. So while this might make it a little easier in most years to meet the requirement to get these affidavit ballots pulled and sent to the Secretary of State, there will still be some years where there won't be enough time to get the general election ballots out 45 days before the election. So for that reason, I'll be opposing the amendment as well as the bill.
Representative Barry.
Just want to point out that all this could be avoided if we had a primary in June.
I sort of had a thought that that might be what you said, but I reckon, okay, there you go. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll on the amendment, which is 1487.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien. Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Barry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Marsh.
No.
Representative Ward.
No.
Representative Sandler. No. Representative Perez.
No.
Representative Lane.
No.
Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Merchant.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
11 to 9.
The amendment carries 11 to 9. It's SB 418 is now before us as amended. Is there a motion? Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I make a motion for auto pass for Senate Bill 418 as amended.
Is there a second? Representative Quayle seconds it.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry. As soon as I said it, I'm like, wait a minute, the mic's not on yet. All right. Representative Terosian, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a bill that certainly, I can't speak for everybody else, but if they're on the same email list as I am, I've gotten substantial emails and heard from many, many constituents as to why they feel this is a good idea, and I certainly do as well. And with the amendment, it certainly addresses some of the concerns that some people had in regard to the military vote in UCAVA. The Secretary of State himself in testimony had brought that up, that a 7-day would address that. For those that don't know, I'm a United States Coast Guard veteran, and I take the ability to ensure in the mechanism to ensure that our military, wherever they may be in the world, can exercise their right. Quite frankly, if it wasn't for our military through some major conflicts, we probably still wouldn't have the right. So I very much appreciate what they do for us, and certainly would never vote against something that would take away their right to vote. By amending the bill, we get a chance to digest how this is going to work with local elections prior to a statewide election, to work out any items that may be something unforeseen. But in regard to, you heard, will there be a lawsuit? Sure, we love to have lawsuits. I would point out this is not Senate Bill 3. This is different than Senate Bill 3. I'm not an attorney, but I believe it would pass muster. We had a representative who was a co-sponsor of the bill that was in that position of being a judge, and he believes with his knowledge and having sat on the bench and heard various legislative items that he believes that, in his opinion, it would pass muster. We don't know till if and when it goes there, but by changing the date. That gives time for any that come forward to be worked through. Regard to showing an ID, let's be honest. In 2022, what can't you do without having an ID? You can't buy alcohol. You can't cash a check. I think in sometimes you can't even register your dog. You can't register your boat, and on and on. You can't get on an airplane. You can't, when you go to a hotel, you have to show an ID. We heard testimony that somebody was picking up their child from daycare and forgot to bring their license with them. Most daycares, you have to show an ID to pick up your child. So anyway, today we live in a time when you need an ID to function in society with whatever you do. So for all those reasons, I will be voting yes to auto pass as amended for Senate Bill 418.
Further discussion, 418 is on the floor as amended. Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure how to summarize 2 hours of testimony in a few minutes. And I know everybody was very attentive to the speakers that we heard last week on this bill, but I do want to highlight a few points that were made. Again, let me start with the problem about getting those ballots ready 45 days prior to the general election. That's still a concern. The amendment that was passed might have helped a little bit for most of a 7-year cycle, but certainly not all. Cordell Johnson and by mail and others in person pointed out that there's already a statute that says no mark of any nature shall be placed on any ballot by an election officer, and yet here we are telling them to identify so-called affidavit ballots, which, by the way, the Secretary of State called provisional ballots, identify them and keep them separate. And so I raised the point about our Constitution. The recent amendment says that an individual's right to live free from government intrusion in private or personal information is natural, essential, and inherent. This affidavit, so-called affidavit ballot process violates the principle of the secret ballot. The moderator is identifying voters, putting a matching number so that that ballot can be matched up with the voter later, and that voter's ballot may, under certain circumstances, be disallowed. I don't know where else to go from there. Let me stop there. I think I did raise a point of a court case that occurred in Kansas, where the 10th Circuit Court had indicated that requiring documentary proof of citizenship from certain voters was a violation of the 14th Amendment under the Equal Protection Clause. I think we have state and federal issues here to be concerned about. And given that the state spent $4 million on litigating Senate Bill 3, I don't think we should be too casual about just simply saying, well, this will probably end up in court because we're spending taxpayers' dollars when it's unnecessary. I will be opposing Senate Bill 418 as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to read from the amendment that has now replaced the section of the bill. For all elections, if a voter on election day is registering to vote for the first time in New Hampshire and does not have a valid photo identification establishing such voter's identification, or does not meet the identity requirements of RSA 659-13, then such voter shall vote by affidavit ballot pursuant to this section. Those are the only voters under this bill, as we've amended, that will be voting by affidavit ballot in New Hampshire. The goal of New Hampshire should be that nobody votes by affidavit ballot. Everyone should be able, and the knowledge should be out there, that they are compliant with the law of voting before they get to the ballot box. This is a really, we've amended the bill, and we've taken the bill sponsored by Senator Gaida, and I believe we've made it far better and something that can work for the state of New Hampshire. But we need to stress to all voters and would-be future voters in New Hampshire, if you show up with your photo identification when you vote, when you register to vote on election day, and again, just for those same day voters, you will vote with a ballot just as everyone else. if you register to vote without photo identification, proving you are who you say you are, then this provision of a affidavit ballot gets into effect. And I think that's very important to remember because everybody should be voting with proper identification so that they don't have to file an affidavit ballot. And I just believe that that is what the people of New Hampshire, pursuant to the emails and certainly the phone calls that I've been receiving, they want us to have this system. It's really a check and balance to make sure that every eligible Granite State voter that can vote is able to vote, and that those that are not eligible are not casting votes and deciding our elections. So I look forward to voting for this bill. And if it goes to a community conference, I'd be willing to be one of the few volunteers to serve on it in order to continue the conversation. And I want to thank the sponsors who brought it forward from the Senate, and I want to thank Representative Berry for his amendment to it to make it stronger. And I look forward to seeing this go through. Thank you.
Further discussion, Representative Hamblett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the result of this bill would be to delay the election result. We already do require identification. We require NID to register or to vote. If a person forgets his or her ID, they have to sign an affidavit already. The Secretary of State follows up on the affidavits after the election. And the bottom line is that there is no substantial voter fraud happening in New Hampshire. So there is no reason for this bill. Thank you.
Representative Berry.
Yes, I'll try to be brief, but like Representative Bergeron said, it's hard to put such a big bill in 2 hours and to be real fast. The first is that voter ID is overwhelmingly popular. I believe a poll from St. Anselm showed that 50% of Democrats in New Hampshire support voter ID. Overall, with the electorate, it's like plus in the 77%, 3/4 of voters support showing an ID to vote. I mean, come on, like it's as Representative Trojan said, it's 2022. You can't buy cold medicine without an ID. The second thing is this is about the NVRA, and I really wish New Hampshire would seriously look at the NVRA. I'm not for federalizing our elections. I was 3 when they passed the National Voter Registration Act, so it's kind of predates me a little bit, if you will. But there's things in there that would solve basically all of these problems. And we keep trying to do these workarounds, and it may be an unpopular opinion, and maybe I'll get attacked by both the left and the right for this, but we should look at it. We should actually have a good faith conversation about it. I want to address 2 concerns. The first of which is representing the other side, the delay. It's worth the delay if you know you're getting the right results. So we currently have a system where, and respectfully to the representative, an affidavit is not an ID. If you have somebody who's committed to double voting, signing a piece of paper where you're giving them a fake name and a fake address it's not an adherence. It's a piece of paper. Like, it's all it is. It has legal authority. Hard to track down somebody when you don't know who they are, where they live, what their name is, how to contact them. So we don't have a system of IDs in New Hampshire. We asked for one. We do not actually require it, and an affidavit is a joke. In terms of, and the other side didn't bring this up in the testimony today, but it was brought up in the hearing about the secret ballot. And that by removing these ballots, you'll be revealing how somebody voted. The fact is that they shouldn't have been voting. They didn't meet the qualifications to cast a ballot. So you're taking out a ballot that should not have been in there. So this notion that this secret ballot has been removed, it should have never been in there to begin with. They didn't meet the qualifications. So this is an attempt to tighten up New Hampshire's absolutely ludicrous same-day registration system. And let me explain, and I'll end with this, just how ludicrous this is. Somebody can show up at any polling location in New Hampshire, any polling location. There's 12 in Manchester. They can walk in. They can register to vote. They present nothing. They Boy Scout honor their way into a ballot. They say, I am who I say I am. Trust me. I'm not lying to you. I promise you. I'll sign this piece of paper saying I'm not lying to you. And we hand them a regular ballot that goes in with every other ballot. Most of this state is actually from other states. I think I hear it's as high as 70. I don't think it is, but it's over 50% of the state is born somewhere else, including myself. Most other states have some form of provisional balloting. This is not provisional balloting. But when you tell people in New Hampshire that people who register to vote on election day that present nothing, absolutely nothing other than a signature, and they're handed a full ballot, they think you're gaslighting them. They think you're making something up. But that is our current system. So we're trying to address that system. I have never said that voter fraud is rampant in New Hampshire. I've never said that. I have said over the last 2 years of this committee hearing that I think that there is a serious problem with people having faith in the election. And there's an almost butterfly effect from the fact that we have a system where anybody can walk in any polling location, present nothing, and be handed a ballot that helps breed these conspiracy theories. And it's the ultimate form of voter suppression. When people don't have faith in the ballot, they don't go vote. That's it. We're trying to address that. This is a very, I don't even know if it's common sense, but it's because I think the NVRA would be common sense. But this is a way to address this issue without doing the NVRA. I wish we were doing the NVRA, but once again, won't go into that. But that's my piece on this. So,
Further discussion, Representative Perez.
Thank you for letting me speak on this bill. This is very concerning to me. As someone who wasn't born here and someone who had a hard time registering to vote, I was sent home 3 times before I was able to register. Do you imagine someone who wasn't born here, who is a new citizen, who literally haven't get the U.S. passport? Because those are the things that I was required to present when I was registering to vote the first time. Do you imagine if the person don't have the U.S. passport and they still waiting because the citizenship paperwork, it gets sent in the mail too after you get your hearing and you swear it and everything. You imagine taking away that from a border that just literally just had the citizenship and they have the right to vote, but we're trying to take that away from that person. And with all the respect from Representative Barry, I have respect for all your concerns and what you're saying, but to be honest, we don't want to disfranchise more voters. And that sounds to me like we're trying to disfranchise new citizens and people of already having trouble getting registered to vote. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Terosian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to reiterate, what the intent of this legislation is to ensure that people bring their ID to the polls. Before we passed and required town clerks to check their voters' IDs, many people, including myself, sometimes wouldn't necessarily remember to bring my wallet because I leave it at home many times. But once we passed that, I made sure I grabbed at least my driver's license out of my wallet, so I had it. I think if this becomes law, it will reinforce that to not forget to bring your ID with you when you go to the polls. And it's that simple. In regard to a lawsuit that we talked about earlier, I'm not advocating, I'm not looking at it cavalierly that there should be one, because I believe this bill as amended should pass scrutiny. I'm just saying the reality is that more than likely somebody will, which is unfortunate, but those are the realities of the way we are in society today, and that's one of the reasons for the amendment. It helps us address that if somebody does bring one. I hope somebody doesn't, because I think it's a good bill as amended.
Further discussion, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think the amendment makes a bad bill much better. But in addition to the sort of philosophical disagreements one might have with a bill like this, it has a number of practical issues that probably don't need to go into in great detail, but it confuses the role of ward moderators with town moderators. It sets up a process for election officials that's cumbersome to the point of being preposterous. And it really is a provisional ballot bill. I think the distinction they're trying to make is a distinction without a difference. So for both those practical and philosophical reasons, I can't vote for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo what Representative Ward just said, that this is a provisional ballot. the distinction that is made is one that really is not a difference. To address another point, the affidavit is not a joke. It subjects someone to a fine of up to $5,000. So we have teeth in our existing law to enforce what is already in place. Also to point out, not everyone has a driver's license, and I think Representative Perez addressed that issue. Not everyone can get a driver's license, particularly if you are a new citizen or you don't know how to drive. There are a lot of elderly folks who do not have a driver's license, or the one they have is expired. So there are a lot of issues. So if we're going to require driver's license as the only method, we need to be careful because there's other ways of providing photo identification. Also wanted, and I missed the hearing, so does this jeopardize our exception to the motor voter requirements that in that bill? I honestly don't know. That's a question. I don't know if it was addressed during the hearing.
I'm sorry, Representative Lane. I've got a procedural issue that just came to my attention.
Okay. Well, my question was, I missed the hearing last week. So did someone address that this may jeopardize our exception to the motor voter requirement? And I think that's the bill that Representative Berry may have been referring to.
I don't think so, but Representative Berry.
Yes, I believe the Brennan Center for Justice actually did address that. Ironically, I believe their representative did that as an attempt to dissuade me from supporting this, not realizing that I would love if the MVRA was kicked in. To another point you said about just a driver's license, I think it's 659.13 outlines all the forms of ID that we take,
Right.
up to and including like a college ID from Dartmouth. So unless you were just making a reference about expired licenses, then I apologize if I'm putting words in your mouth. I wouldn't want to do that, but I just want to address that point.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to expand upon the testimony from the speaker from the Brennan Center relative to the National Voter Registration Act, also called Motor Voter. Some of the points made is that the motor voter law says that all voters, the exemptions require that all voters in the state be able to register on election day. They must be able to register at the polling place, and such registration must be at the time of voting in the federal general election. So there were other reasons given, but there is a real possibility that enactment of this bill might remove New Hampshire's exemption from the National Voter Registration Act. And I believe, and I can stand to be corrected, that the Secretary of State's estimate of the cost to implement motor voter was about $6 million.
Representative Berry.
Representative Brennan, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. But could we, in theory, pass tangentially related to this, could we, in theory, pass a law that bans same-day registration for people casting a state ballot where they could only get a federal ballot? Would that be, in your opinion, in line with the NVRA?
I have no idea. I'm not an
Fair enough.
Further discussion on this? I will say that you may have recalled during the meeting I asked to, pardon me? That I asked to speak to the person from the Brennan Center, and we went outside because I asked her for the exemption that we have to the NVRA because it's been something I've been on the search for a while. And she didn't have it. She went back to an old memo that she had. So we talk about triggering all sorts of things, and I think they're grossly premature. In regards to the voter ID, this is beginning to sound a little bit like the arguments that occurred in this body before I was a member of it in regards to the institution of the requirement of voter ID to the extent we have it, because there was much discussion and objection to it that it was going to cause all sorts of problems. And the reality is it sort of was enacted with basically a whimper. And I do want to just provide information for the committee and people who might be listening. We're doing a lot of talking about affidavits and possibly changing things and what this will mean. What we're talking about is something where we have a count on election night and it might change in 7 days. This is still far ahead of pretty much every other state in the United States in regards to when they have their official voting results. So the question becomes, if we don't have substantial fraud, and I would posit that that's not what is necessary for the state to have an interest in ensuring that all ballots are cast by qualified voters, what exactly would the impact of this be? Because we also heard testimony from a representative who lost a race by a vote. So what is the potential in a primary that we are actually going to result in a change in the winner? Because that's what we're talking about, the issue of printing a ballot after a primary for someone to vote on, because otherwise there really isn't an issue. And in 2020, with information provided by the Secretary of State's office, domicile affidavits, no longer a part of this bill with the amendment, there were a total of 2,859 completed throughout the state. 186 were returned as undeliverable. 141 of those were resolved by the Secretary of State's office before referral for investigation, and 45 are currently in investigation. Qualified voter affidavits. There were 652 completed qualified voter affidavits in 2020. 32 people returned their postcards. That's even pretty dismal for a survey when you put it out and you're hoping for a response rate. 290 simply never came back. No, they got sent somewhere, put into somewhere, and never got returned. And 40 were actually returned as undeliverable. And challenge voter affidavits, which is the no ID, there were a total of 733 completed throughout the state. Of those, 438 returned the follow-up card. 215 did not respond. In other words, those cards did not come back. They ended up somewhere. No one returned them. And 45 were returned as undeliverable. I believe we heard testimony in another hearing from people who were following up and finding out that a lot of these cards were sent to homes where new owners were saying, yeah, we get mail for this person all the time. They're not here. It goes in the trash. And we also heard testimony about the one person, one vote. But so what we're talking about potentially for 733, if we take 2020, which was an extraordinary turnout, 438 returned the card. So that means we are talking about that number of people, and 45 returned as undeliverable. I would posit that that might be the people that people are worried were somehow disenfranchising by not voting, meeting requirements is not disenfranchising. So just so you have those numbers for your records, I thought that would be helpful. The motion on the floor is ought to pass as amended for 418. Is there any further discussion on it? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien.
Yes.
Representative Sweeney.
Yes.
Representative Healy.
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry.
Yes.
Representative Simon.
Yes.
Representative Quayle.
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Marsh.
No.
Representative Ward.
No.
Representative Sandler. No. Representative Perez.
No.
Representative Lane.
No.
Representative Freitas.
No.
Representative Hamblett.
No.
Representative Merchant.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
11 to 9.
SB 418 will be reported as ought to pass as amended. The amendment number is 1487. The next bill to be considered by the committee today is 425, relative to the establishment of an election information portal. We had the public hearing on this last week on April 8th. Is there a motion on 425? Representative Berry,
Yes, Madam Chairman, I move that SB 425 be inexpedient to legislate.
is there a second? Representative Sweeney,
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
Representative, would you like to speak to your motion?
I'll be brief because we can make it to lunch for once, which would be exciting for election law. Um, SB 425 establishes the. I think we saw a similar bill last year about the online portal. It has a price tag of $11.5 million, which is pretty incredible. We just talked about the MVRA would only cost us $6 million. Not that I'm pushing the MVRA today, but $11.5 million. I look at that into kind of things that we've passed this year that have caused heart attacks, EFAs, letting disadvantaged and working class families have access to different schools was $8.4 million, and we lost our mind over that. So $11.5 million for basically a website and a database that'd probably be programmed in SQL with some Python background. Is a little absorbent. So it's in tacking in things that would be in the NVRA, making it you should register to vote, that sort of stuff, but it comes with none of the integrity measures. So until we get serious about this stuff, I'm going to be voting no, and I'm not going to be putting an $11.5 million price tag on a website.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be opposing the motion to find this legislation inexpedient to legislate. While I appreciate the reference to the financial note here saying that it's going to cost $10,000 over a period of 3 fiscal years to implement this system, I find that really hard to believe. Sometimes if you look into the details of how those numbers are arrived at, the Department of Information Technology, for example, is saying that maintenance and operations will need to be increased to 4 full-time equivalents. And I'm sorry, we've seen a lot of bills come before this committee where some of the departments say, well, I'm going to need an additional full-time person in each of the substations of the motor vehicle division to implement this provision. And sometimes it's just an opportunity to try and increase staffing needs. And this assumes, the fiscal note assumes that the software and licenses are all going to be developed in-house. That's not what the bill says, actually. The bill says that this idea or suggestion for a voter information portal will be developed in consultation with the Department of Information Technology. I would also point out that the Secretary of State's office currently is going through an RFP process to try and establish a new voter registration system. The current one is antiquated. It can't be used with some of the more modern browsers, particularly in terms of Microsoft. And it's breaking apart. We had testimony during one of our hearings on a different bill this session, for example, that if you wanted to have an updated absentee voter request list, you might be able to get it in a few months because the software is breaking down so much. So to me, it makes perfect sense that the work that will need to be done to help develop or design an election information portal should probably be done simultaneously with the development of new voter registration software. And therefore, I will be supporting the bill because, one, I don't believe the fiscal note, and two, I think in terms of efficiency, this is the time to do it.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I'll be supporting the motion of inexpedient to legislate, but knowing how sometimes policy that switches from one body to the other somehow finds a way back in later April and May, I do want to just note for the record that I also have concerns not only with the fiscal note of the bill, but during the testimony there was reference to consumer data being commingled into this online election portal, tying individuals' financial histories and their purchases, and might even having card, even either debit or credit card information stored on that file. I am very uneasy with the idea of the state getting into that sort of data collection process of voters or residents or whatnot. So if somehow this policy or this bill finds its way back, either this session in another vehicle or in the future, I think that's a real concern that members of this committee or any committee that it goes to needs to protect the individual's privacy and the data that is being collected. And that was just one thing from the testimony that alarmed me, and wanted to put that on the record so we were all aware of it. Thank you.
Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick follow-up to those comments. Maybe that's why the dollar amount of the estimate for this kind of program is so high, because there's no need for the state to develop a credit-based authentication or knowledge-based authentication system. Those already exist. And I would be willing to bet that a lot of you have already used these for different purposes, where you're trying to access information or a record or make corrections to a credit card database. Suddenly 5 or 6 screens will pop up and will say, choose one of the following addresses where you previously lived at, or you have lived at the current residence for X number of years, and they're all multiple choice questions. That's information that's gathered by third-party software. It scours credit bureau reports, it scours public records, and then throws up a series of questions for the person to answer. It's an established, well-used process. It's not tied into the voter registration system or the example I gave during the hearing to our vital records system. It resides outside of all that. So I thought it was an interesting suggestion, but again, we're talking about forming a study committee, and perhaps the study committee will say, well, we don't even want to use that. There's other systems out there that would be cheaper and easier for our public. So that's what a study committee's for. And with that, I will end my comments.
I thank you, Representative Bergeron. If I can say in response, I don't understand this to be the formation of a study committee, which is why I'm going to be voting against it. I think I expressed concern in the hearing about the composition of who is going to be in consultation for doing this. And not that I don't think that we have wonderful staff throughout the state, but the idea of sort of giving what appeared to me to be pretty broad spectrum of requirements to the group identified without any sort of outside oversight seemed a little, for the expenditure of $10 million, did not seem appropriate to me. And again, we may or may not agree the $10 million, but what we also heard was DOIT is thinking about this as the basis for doing other things for other departments. And I think what I heard was, and that cost is going to come down as they're doing other work for other departments, almost like we're taking the $10 million and spreading it around, even though it's still $10 million. If it was the study committee, I probably would have been more in favor of it, but it basically says you go out and do it, but don't have it usable before January 1st of 2023. I thought about doing an amendment for a study committee for this. I frankly couldn't get to it. I frankly would have been more in favor of a budget for allocation of hiring a vendor to make recommendations for the implementation of an information portal that addresses this. And then if there are other departments that wanted to get on it to do that, I think Representative Bergeron pointed out in the hearing that there appears to be subscription services being used now in our town and cities that may or may not have been accounted for in connection with putting this bill together. So I think there were a number of reasons during the committee hearing that led me to believe that this was not ready to go forward. So I will be supporting the motion to ITL. Representative Berry.
Just one final point about government contracts. People who contract with the government have an amazing ability to bring things in right at the maximum quote. So if you tell them they got 11.5 million, it's going to be 11.5 million.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll for the vote.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Barry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
No.
Representative Marsh,
No.
Representative Ward,
No.
Representative Sandler. No. Representative Perez,
No.
Representative Lane,
No.
Representative Freitas,
No.
Representative Hamblett,
No.
Representative Merchant,
No.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
11 to 9.
SB 425 will be reported out of committee as ITL with a vote of 11 to 9. 427 remains before us to be addressed. This is modifying the absentee voter registration process, absentee ballot application, and absentee ballot voting process. This had a public hearing on April 6th. Is there a motion?
Yes,
Repre-
Madam Chairman.
Representative McDonald.
I move that Senate Bill 427 FN be determined to be inexpedient to legislate.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Representative Terosian seconds it. Representative McDonald, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, very briefly, Madam Chairman. The provisions, the modifications this bill proposes are very vague, very open-ended, and frankly, the current allowances for absentee ballot, absentee participation are sufficient, and this bill is unnecessary.
Further discussion on the motion, Representative Bergeron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill passed the Senate on a voice vote, had bipartisan support. It adds to the reasons for requesting an absentee ballot the words illness or other medical condition. And there are illnesses or other medical conditions, as the sponsor noted during a testimony, that don't fall within the category of physical disability. I can think of an example where a family member had prostate surgery a couple of days before the election and was in no condition to, no medical condition to go to the polling place. He had to get an absentee ballot. He lives in another state, brought to him by a family member. If someone has the measles, that's not necessarily a physical disability, but I don't think the voter should be going to the polling place. And I think everybody at the polling place would rather that person stay home too. So there are reasons, legitimate reasons, when people may be ill or have other medical conditions where they should be entitled to vote absentee, and therefore I will be opposing the motion to find this inexpedient to legislate, and will be supporting the bill if a motion of ought to pass comes forward.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander,
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
Clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron,
No. Sorry.
Representative Marsh,
No.
Representative Ward,
No.
Representative Sandler, Representative Perez,
No.
Representative Lane,
No.
Representative Freitas,
No.
Representative Hamblett,
No.
Representative Merchant,
No.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
11-9.
SB 427 will be reported out as in ITL 11-9. You may think that's the end of your business. However, the chair makes a motion to reconsider our last, the SB 405, and would request a second so she can speak to her motion. Representative Sweeney seconds it. Thank you. I have in front of me another amendment, 1499, which was part of what had been discussed with OLS earlier in regards to a provision of SB 405 as it originally came to us that did not make it into the amendment. And I would like to reopen executive session on this bill so that this amendment can be considered. Representative Berry.
Just a procedural question to make sure that we're on the up and up. Do we need to vote on the motion to reconsider?
Yes. as far as I
Because
know.
I will support that. Obviously, I just don't want what we do to get tossed.
It's what comes next that I'm going to need some guidance on. So yes, I do need a vote on the motion to reconsider. Okay. All right. The clerk is getting her roll call thing done. Sorry, I didn't give her any advance warning. In the meantime, I'm gonna just pass these out. Go. Here. So this is a motion to reconsider SB 405. Thank you, ma'am. Sweeney,
The HB or SB?
SB. We're reconsidering SB 405. All right, ready? You got your substitute names?
We'll wing it.
Okay. The clerk's going to call the roll. Thank you.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander,
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Marsh,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Perez,
Yep.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Freitas,
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So when the original bill SB 405 came before us, I had noted a question in paragraph 8A in regards to the statutory references and the penalty amount. Apparently, on the Senate side, that question had been raised while they were deliberating by the AG's office, but it was not addressed by the Senate. I received word from the Attorney General's office this Monday about we have this amendment that needs to be done, and I have not received a response from the Senate side as to their preference. What you have before you is the Attorney General's recommended change to this provision, which adds the reference to 664-17, which was needed in the section to begin with, and makes the civil penalty fine consistent with what the law is, and in other statutes. So that is the purpose of this amendment. Obviously, this bill will be amended. Now that we are reconsidering this bill, I will need to what will happen is we need another vote on the amendment we already passed, which I would request that you vote for again, because after reconsidering my reconsideration, I really don't want you to reconsider it. So I want you to vote in favor of 1383. And then I am going to request an affirmative vote on 1499, and staff would then, in connection with the processing of it, create a consolidated amendment. Questions? Representative Bergeron.
Further comment, if I may?
Yeah, sure.
What the chair is referring to with this second amendment pertains to page 2 of the original bill, lines 10 through 12, and I had questioned that as well. I thought maybe it was a typo where it says RSA 664:14, because that statute refers to political advertising, which is not mentioned anywhere else in the bill. I thought maybe it was supposed to be 17. So this amendment that's being brought forward, I think, clarifies the confusion, and I will support the first amendment we already approved, the second one that's being put before us, and then the bill is ought to pass as amended.
So yes, yes, and yes. We are going out on a bang, everybody. This will be 3. I'm hoping. We'll see what happens. All right, so we're going to need 3 votes. One on Amendment 1383. One on 1499, and then one as OTP as amended. I know. I just got to look for my clerk.
I don't know if I have enough forms. Okay, so this one right
Oh,
now,
you mean, no, that's not the form she needs. She needs the roll call sheet.
What about these?
Okay,
Yep.
yep.
okay, so we're gonna do 1449.
We'll do 14, all right.
now.
She's got 1449 done in front of her. So let's do, I'm gonna do 1393 the second time. All right,
Okay.
so let's,
Yep, okay.
so The vote right now is on we have already reconsidered. So, have I actually moved this amendment? We did vote on the reconsideration, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I move, amendment 1499 to SB 405. Representative Sweeney seconds, yes. So we're moving the amendment. And it's 1499. right.
OTP.
No,
Okay.
yeah, it's just the
Yep.
amendment is all
Yep.
we're moving on.
Yep.
Okay, so if you call the roll on that.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander.
Yes.
Representative Terosian.
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler. Representative Perez,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Freitas,
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Muirhead. No, Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
1499 passes 20-0. I move amendment number 1383 for 405. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Representative Terosian seconds. Is there any further discussion, on this motion? Thank you for reconsidering. I ask for your affirmative vote. I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yes.
Representative Hayward. Yeah, I don't have
Healy.
it filled in, sorry.
Yes.
Representative Healy. Representative Alexander,
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron.
Yes.
Representative Marsh,
Yes.
Representative Ward. Okay, Representative Sandler. Representative Perez,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Freitas,
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
Amendment 1383 passes 20-0. I move ought to pass 405 as amended by 1383 and 1499.
Second.
And seconded by Representative Terosian. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Representative Prudhomme O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Sweeney,
Yeah. Yes.
okay. Representative Healy,
Yes.
Representative Alexander,
Yes.
Representative Terosian,
Yes.
Representative Berry,
Yes.
Representative Simon,
Yes. I think it is.
Representative Quayle,
Yes.
clerk is yes. Representative Bergeron,
Yes.
Representative Marsh,
Yes.
Representative Ward,
Yes.
Representative Sandler, Representative Perez,
Yes.
Representative Lane,
Yes.
Representative Freitas,
Yes.
Representative Hamblett,
Yes.
Representative Merchant,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0.
So it passes as amended 20-0. That, I believe, concludes our consideration of bills from the Senate. Not only did we finish up with 3 consecutive unanimous votes, we cleaned up the work of the Senate at the same time. So a very successful ending to the committee here. I want to thank everybody. I do not know that we will be meeting again because I think at this point everything is going to the floor. I will be in touch in regards to committee of conferences that may need to attend as the Senate or this body may decide is appropriate, which may require further committee meetings. So I think that's where we're at. Representative Bergeron.
given that you said this might be the last hearing of the committee, I would like to express my and our appreciation to all the members of the committee. I think we got a lot done this year and last year. We didn't always agree, but I think everybody treated everybody else respectfully and courteously, and I know that I personally appreciate that very much. And thank you.
I think I can say on behalf of the members on my side of the aisle, sort of, thank you very much. And I want to thank you, Representative Bergeron. I think your experience and your attention to detail adds a lot and has made a number of bills better. And certainly the comments on the bills more pointed. I have to say that when I see that either you or Representative Lane are doing reports, I roll my eyes and groan, because I know they are going to be detailed, quite effective, and include at least 2 references to case law. So, thank you to everybody. You've been a pleasure to have around the table with me. Thank you for your indulgence with my conduct of the meetings, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
It's time for lunch.
There you go. I want committee reports today. Today, Representative Berry has already sent me what I have to rewrite. The rest of you send it along.
Congratulations, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to sit here and figure out where all my amendments are and what they're doing.
How about we quarantine here until we get them done, or can we just?
No, you can leave, but to the extent, I'll just tell you, if I get committee reports in, that means next week's session is going to be probably the last session as a member of this committee that you have to pay attention to what's going on. So there you go. You're always paying attention.